Thank you very much, Bindu. It was a wonderful session. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel State-of-the-Art MLOps Platforms. I'm Nandish, Director of Product here at Abacus, and the moderator for this session. With me, we have Manbir Paul and Terry Miller, who are the data analytics and machine learning leaders at their respective companies. Manbir is VP of Engineering Data Insights and Marketing at Sephora, and Terry is Executive Director of Global Advanced Analytics at Johnson's Controls. To kick off the session, Manbir and Terry, why don't you introduce yourself, walk us through your backgrounds, and tell us a bit more about what comes to your mind when you hear the word MLOps.
Terry, I'll let you go.
Thanks, Paul. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Nice to meet you.
So I think your introduction was sufficient, Nandish, in that in the work that I do currently. Background is in predictive analytics. I think my hands-on machine learning background was for Toyota Motor, doing some project work on industrial robots. So that's sort of my hands-on background now. Not a lot of coding in my world today, but I do have experience in that. So it's nice to meet everyone.
Manbir Paul, and my background is definitely not coming directly from data. Started in the software engineering space. I've been in retail for a little more than a decade, but it was exciting to see the opportunity unlock in the retail space looking at data and AI. And that's kind of how I stumbled across data and AI, have gone through implementing data and AI practice in the retail space, growing it at a global scale. And that's kind of my area of focus. At Sephora, as Nandi called out, my focus is marketing technologies, data and AI. So data and AI in the backbone of supporting marketing technologies. And the other part of the question on MLOps, Nandi, when I look at MLOps, I'm really looking at the concept of scalability, manageability, and dependability. In the retail space, at least, I also have a background of thinking of MLOps in terms of enabling democratization within the organization. And we'll talk more about that.
Terry, do you also want to comment on what comes to your mind when you hear the word MLOps?
Yeah, I guess for my team, I think there's probably a formal semantic definition, but for my team, it's how can we do more with less? Because I think quality data scientists are tough to come by, especially in the industrial world. So how can we expand our scope and our reach? And how can we make our work easier with a platform? So that's sort of our definition of MLOps.
Makes a lot of sense. So thank you for your opening thoughts, for your introductions and opening thoughts on MLOps. Now let's actually go further and discuss the application of MLOps in your respective organizations. What tool sets do you use in your respective organizations to kind of get your models into production, be it from creating features, training models, deploying them, monitoring the models, and so on? And how has this tool set evolved over time?
Yeah, so at least I'm going to talk in context to the retail space, and retail getting into technology is it can really depend on the organization, how much you want to get into the cutting edge tool chain to enable that. And it also depends on the speed at which an organization wants to drive investment within data and AI. We are right now, we're very much Databricks shops. So all our ops and model management pieces are sitting within aspects of Databricks. MLflow is definitely our key to manage the ML pipelines, focus on model registry, driving collaborations using collaborated notebooks within Databricks. of course, using the explainability, using explainable AI and the model serving and monitoring modules over there.
Yeah, so for us, I think of it in two parts, or three actually. There's the data ingest piece, the actual model training piece, and then of course the output. Our company, Johnson Controls, is an official partner with Microsoft. So all of our storage and sort of data ingest infrastructure is Azure. So a lot of what we do, we're at varying stages of maturity on that piece, unfortunately, most of them immature. But a lot of what we do is bring, and we have 256 different ERP systems globally and hundreds of data stores. So a lot of the work has been to this point to get all of those disparate sources into a data lake, into blob storage. And unfortunately, that's where my team picks up all of these disparate sources. So we do all of our feature engineering in Python using the notebooks that Abacus has developed. We do all of our model training. We have 6 models in production. We do all of our model training in Abacus. And then depends on the business that we're modeling for, how we output. So there's a heavy Salesforce component, obviously, for the work that we're doing. Salesforce is part of it, and then there are just good old-fashioned spreadsheets. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge on the ingest and the output side, but our model training piece is pretty well defined.
Thank you, both of you, for providing color into the application of MLOps in your organization. We covered a bunch of different pieces. So I just wanted to pick your brains on what are some of the challenges that you face today, and like which piece of MLOps poses the most challenges for you?
So I'll take a stab at that, and I'm pretty sure I'll have more thoughts as we talk about this. For me, getting into the ML space and talking about the most challenging pieces, and I'll give you a little bit of background on the thought process around here. I think one of the key enablers when we get into the ML side of the world is really setting up realistic expectations. I think when you get into space of ML, especially in the retail world, I'm pretty sure might be a common kind of challenge outside as well. It is a buzzword that can unlock miracles, right? A silver spoon that can make things magically better. And setting up that realistic expectations upfront is super important for success to be defined and failures to be defined. And I think one of the biggest area of opportunity is really the whole concept of feature generation, feature storage, and being able to leverage features across neighboring use cases and problem spaces. So the most challenging part is really enabling that feature engineering piece of work to inform whatever domain of problem that you're solving, instead of getting into the pigeonhole of trying to find a better model and trying to optimize the model, when sometimes a low-hanging fruit is really working on the feature engineering pieces.
So I agree with Paul on that piece. And I think that's a problem. That's the next frontier for any MLOps platform, is how to, the exploratory data analysis piece, how to mitigate some of those constraints. I think for us the biggest challenge is how do we get the output from our platform into the flow of the business? Because there's a lot of the challenges that I've had over the years in machine learning, predictive analytics, have been making business impact with the output of the model. And I think the more seamless the handshake between the two places, between the ML, the output from the platform and the sort of the way the natural rhythm of the business, I think the more seamless that handshake is, the better the impact on the business will be. So I think that's been my primary focus, is how do we impact the business with our output? And that's not just a quality of model position. That's a systems issue. It's a change management issue. There are a number of different things that go into play there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys on that. This is what we have seen with a lot of our customers as well. Especially with AutoML becoming better and better, feature engineering plays a really important role in getting actually translating the business problem into a machine learning problem becomes the biggest value add. And then feature engineering, which I think is part of that, is really, really important. And as Terry, you mentioned, it's important to get these results into production, or to get some business value out of the results. Otherwise, there's no point building a bunch of models. So moving on. According to what we have seen, MLOps is still evolving rapidly, and we have seen companies take different approaches when it comes to MLOps platforms. We have seen companies stitch together different open source softwares, to companies using multiple vendors, to companies using an end-to-end platform for MLOps. Do you think we're going to standardize on any of these approaches? And if so, which one do you think we would standardize on, and why?
All right, I'll go. Well, it's a tough question. I mean, the challenge with standardization in this space is I feel data and AI is a lot of research and flexibility and openness in getting things done, and standardization has to come in place, not hampering the aspect of flexibility and openness. And when I look at data and ML space, the polyglot way of approaching a problem and providing that flexibility is super important. So I feel like it all depends on the kind of space and the kind of challenges that you're dealing with. For example, dealing with an online model versus an offline model could have different ramification of what standard definition of standardization means over there. The whole concept of the needs of data and the scale at which the solution needs to function also impacts the definition of standardization. So I feel like it's important to have a very clear view of what standardization means to an organization before even approaching the concept of standardization. I'll leave it right there, and maybe we'll touch on this a little bit more, but that's kind of my approach when someone talks about standardization.
So I think as I mentioned earlier, we view MLOps in three sort of phases: the data ingest piece, the model training piece, and the output piece. I think your question is specifically around the model training piece, because that's kind of where MLOps is focused today. For us, and one of the reasons why we chose the platform that we did, one of the main reasons, is it was mentioned in the previous discussion that interpretability and explainability for machine learning is a problem, is a challenge. So for us, that's clearly the case. The business doesn't have an appetite for black box algorithms. They want to know why. So for us, incorporating SHAP values, which were, sort of the newest or most recent tool, open source tool for explainability, that's part of the platform that it's part of Abacus. It's part of the platform that we use. So I think standardization around topics like explainability, interpretability, precision, the model fit metrics, and how you measure performance. I think if platforms evolve to standardize also around evaluating distribution of features and how to potentially transform features, those sorts of things, I think that's going to be a key. It would certainly be a value for us as well. So I think today, as it stands today, the standardization around things that make the models better, whether it be explainability or feature selection, I think that's going to be key.
Makes a lot of sense. As a follow-up to this, do you think there is a stage in an organization's life or team maturity when companies should start looking into MLOps or MLOps platforms, or should people be focusing on it, or should teams be focusing on it right from day one? Do you want to provide some insights into that?
Yeah, I think this is a very good segue getting into this, and even going to the previous topic or the question about standardization, that kind of plays into this very well. As Terry was talking about some aspects of standardization, I feel like the definition of standardization can also evolve as you go through the maturity curve in the data and AI space. And that also comes into play when you talk about investing in MLOps, or if you need an MLOps platform. I think your pain point, opportunity, or a challenge within the data and ML space could change as you mature through the maturity curve. So to really get into the time of investment or whether you need a platform or not, I feel like there are different aspects or variables that play into this. It's the pace and the speed at which you are driving investment and solutions within this space. I think it's important to make sure that platform is, as Terry was calling out, right? Platform should enable abstraction of complexity or speed to market, right? Reusability, and all that are key variables to understand, is it the right time for me to invest in an MLOps platform? I think it's important to make sure that we look at our current challenges of enabling or productionalizing an ML solution. And if that challenge fits into the concept of reusability, fits into the concept of abstraction of complexity, abstraction of infrastructures, abstraction of feature engineering, abstraction of model management, explainability, and all aspects of that. I think those are the key pieces for, as Terry was talking about earlier, if explainability is a key challenge or something that helps us define our success or failures faster and measure them with less complexity, that's your challenge, and that defines the need of why an MLOps solution needs to be in place. Maybe a module of that, but some aspect of that.
Terry, do you want to go next?
Yeah, that was a good explanation. I would agree with everything Paul said. Really nothing new to add other than to specifically answer the question, at what stage should a company consider an MLOps platform? As with every tool, there's an ROI consideration. So what is the return on the investment of a platform? What is the cost of the investment? How will it be used? How many predictions, or inferences does a firm imagine running through the platform? I think all those considerations have to go into when it's purchased. But I think conceptually, for me anyway, I mean, this is all subjective, but I think conceptually there's a point at which if our productivity could be expanded, we could expand our scope, increase the speed to solutions to market. I think that's the point where I would seriously consider evaluating an MLOps platform. So all the considerations that I mentioned, but also what does it do for us? And I think generally, and not to get too long-winded on this answer, but I think generally there's a bit of a case of folks having tools just to have tools, and pieces of software just to have pieces of software. And I call it the lead guitar player syndrome. And so I think there's a real critical evaluation that has to be made on the cost considerations. What value does it provide from a productivity standpoint? And I think those were all the things that we evaluated as a team, or I evaluated for our team when we were choosing our MLOps platform.
That makes a ton of sense. Also, picking on one thing that you guys brought up right at the beginning, like what comes to your mind when you hear the word MLOps? Like both of you mentioned about like scalability and doing more with less. So a question related to that. So in this context, like as MLOps tools or platforms help you do more with less, how do you see the role of data scientists or data engineers and ML engineers evolve as companies start adopting some of these tools and platforms?
I'll go first this time. Yeah. So I think this is. I don't know if there are data scientists on our call now, but I think this is where we as a professional group need to have some serious self-reflection. I don't think MLOps platforms, if you're providing value or any threat to the work that we're doing, I think they enhance the work that we're doing. I don't think an MLOps platform is going to be capable of defining a business problem and working with the business to understand how the algorithm can be used and finding features to be used in the platform. I think, for us, especially anything to automate pieces of our workflow, as long as, the considerations that we were talking about previously, as long as those considerations are met, we're all for it. And I think the data scientists on my team are the biggest proponents of the platform that we use for that reason. It makes their job easier. There's always going to be work in feature engineering. There's always going to be work for data scientists developing business context for problems to be solved. And then there's more work than any of us can do to actually take the output of the model and have an impact in the business. So I think if as data scientists, we should really evaluate our work as a more holistic work within, or more holistic function within the business, and not just a programmer. And I think there's a distinction there.
Thank you. Yeah, good.
Completely agree with Terry, and I would also add the concept of enhanced collaboration within these roles. I feel like that is also in some shape or form enabled by an aspect of a platform, an aspect of standardization, whatever the definition of standardization is, because that all relates to the challenges or the problems that I have in my daily life as a data scientist, as an ML engineer. And I feel like or even data engineers, I feel like the evolution, when you talk about how do these roles evolve, I feel like the evolution is really more closer collaboration and more overlap in the roles and responsibilities in these roles. I think there's also an opportunity of being able to play different roles if there is appetite for individuals to evolve among these roles, whether it's data scientist and ML engineer or data engineer getting into more of a modeling space. I think that kind of all sums up with driving collaboration, driving reusability, and reducing some aspects of challenges in my day-to-day life if I can really focus on the exciting stuff that I enjoy doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just to follow up on that question, have you ever faced any pushback from your data scientists or any internal teams when you're adopting these tools? I know you mentioned that people should look at it from the perspective of collaboration, but generally curious if you have faced any pushback and how you generally deal with it.
I feel my immediate reaction, sorry, Terry, my immediate reaction when I heard this is also the concept of just being able to make yourself comfortable in the space of driving collaboration. I can give you an example, right? I've had situations where a data scientist would write a piece of code on a notebook. 6 months later, that same person would have struggled to read that notebook and make sense out of it, right? And you got to get to that level of maturity where you can be free to write a piece of code and be confident that that code can be shared and reused and drive collaboration. I feel that's a level of maturity that every individual and every team would, I would say, embrace in order to grow in his or her career in this space. So I would say that's more of a coaching to drive progression in individuals' career in this path.
Makes a lot of sense. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, we haven't, to your specific question, we on my internal team, my team directly, we've had no pushback just because I solicited they were part of the process in evaluating different tech stacks. I think where we did get pushback is, if a company especially a 140-year-old legacy company like Johnson Controls has standardized or on a partnership with Microsoft, then whatever's in that ecosystem, there's a pressure from IT and IT purchasing to stay with those tools, Databricks, ML, whatever is part of that ecosystem. So I had obviously to make a business justification case for going outside of that ecosystem. Not really pushback from my team, but I think there are some of those challenges as well. If a company has a formal partnership with one of the big GCPs or some other software vendor, getting exceptions to some piece of the stack is a bit of a challenge.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is something common that we see. And I think in the long run, the best platform always wins, like the best tools always win. So I have one last question for you guys before we take any audience questions. So there are a lot of data scientists on this attending this conference. Do you have any suggestions on how they should shape their careers, or what skill set should they acquire to be more employable as companies start adopting a lot of more and more ML tools and getting to scale?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think this is a great question, and maybe this isn't a popular answer, but I think kind of the theme for me is focus way less on tools, and obviously you have to know how to write code. We all do. But focus more on being intellectually curious and learning how the business works and reading things about how economies work and just being more well-rounded outside of the field of data science. And I think that I've seen that, have multiple PhDs on my team, and they're brilliant. But they're very specialized in their knowledge. And a lot of what we do these weekly teaching sessions. A lot of what we do, or what I do when it's my turn, is talk about soft skills and bring in studies specific to soft skills. And I think that's the challenge for data science, for machine learning generally, is that there's a disconnect between the technical minutia of training an algorithm and how do you make business decisions based on the output of the model. And I think that disconnect is a data scientist that's fluent in that piece has the world at their fingertips. And so I think I would encourage everyone, probably all of us, not just data scientists, be intellectually curious, read, learn about your business, learn about the people within the business, learn how to ask questions from them specifically. I think there's so much value that can be had from just basic statistics, basic applied statistics, but with really, really strong business context. And then, if you can combine machine learning algorithms to predict this, or, to solve various business problems, and you have the soft skills to, sort of lead the adoption of those algorithms, then that's when it's really successful in an organization.
Yeah, very well said, Terry. Completely agree. I'm going to take a different stand as we're talking about ops. So from an MLOps standpoint, and keeping that in mind, I want to say that it's important to get your ops or / infra right up front when we're getting into a problem space. So keeping that in the back of the mind and coming up with a solution, and keeping it simple up front. We tend to get into, in certain cases, there's passion to look for the fanciest model that can drive the best results. But if your infra cannot really support, or your ops cannot really support delivering those results, and you're not doing justice by investing that much upfront and looking for the fanciest model. So keep it simple, keep an eye on your infra to help support you. Keep an eye on what kind of latency is needed in order for you to enable that. I think keeping that mindset in the back of your mind as you get into the problem space is going to be crucial to get the results out.
That's an amazing answer. I think we definitely have a lot of positive response from the audience on this. Just before we close off the session, do you have any closing comments that you want to make in general about MLOps or anything that we didn't cover, and you just wanted to have your closing thoughts on it? Maybe.
Paul should go first this time.
Okay, all right, I'll go first. I'll just say this is, so first of all, thank you for setting this up. I think this is a very exciting topic, and I'm pretty sure anyone in the data science and ML space should be reading quite a lot and being on top of the game with this. I think this is definitely an area that is going to take ML and data field to the next level of scale, really driving transformation within organizations. So I would just say anyone getting into this space or in this space, make sure that you have a very clear understanding on what MLOps would mean for you within the organization that you're in. Make sure that you have an understanding on what are the challenges that would be coming your way in order to drive your area of solution to really deliver value for the organization. So being vested in this space as you progress within your own domain from a data sciences standpoint is going to be super critical to drive success for yourself in this field.
Yeah, I guess quickly at the end, I'm appreciative to you, Nandish and Bindu and the team for having us. It's nice I enjoy these sessions where I get to meet other folks and learn a little bit what other folks are doing. So thank you for that. And in terms of closing thoughts, I think there is, and I really enjoyed, I wanted to be on the last panel. That was the panel I wanted to be on, discussing the hype of AI versus what's actually being done. So I think there are a lot of tons of opportunity and to solve real problems in business, and understanding tools and how the tools fit into problem solving, I think is the big takeaway for all of us in the space. Is let the researchers figure out what new tools are cool, and then we as folks working in industry should really try to solve problems, very specific and tangible problems with the tools. So I think that's what we try to do on a daily basis. And anytime someone comes to my team or comes to me for our team to ask us to, can we use AI to do this or whatever, is I have them send me a 1-sentence problem statement. And if they can't do that, then they don't really know what they're trying to do. So I think really clear, concise problems, and then find technology that helps you do more of those things efficiently. And I think that's what MLOps has meant for us. And, can mean different things for different people, but that's certainly what it's meant for my team.
Thank you very much, Terry and Manbir. It was amazing chatting with you. It was a lovely conversation, and I think a lot of audience are also leaving positive comments for sharing great insights. And Terry, we'll definitely keep in mind your request for the next workshop. And thank you very much, Terry and Manbir, for attending the session and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.